So you've got your LACERA merch.
Yeah. Well,
Recording in progress.
Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Investments. Today is Wednesday, April 8th, and the time is 9:13 a.m. First item will be the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Smee, would you mind leading us? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our next item for business is procedures for teleconference meetings.
Thank you, Chair Keough. This meeting is being conducted as an in-person and virtual meeting. So I will do a roll call of the trustees to confirm attendance. Ms. Ginsburg? Here. Ms. Martinez? Ms. Langton? Here. Mr. Fay? Mr. Keough?
Present.
Mr. Jones?
Present.
Ms. Martin? Ms. Mee? Here. And Mr. Gatto?
here.
Mr. Gatto will be participating under teleconference policy SB 707. Mr. Gatto, can you please confirm if there are any individuals 18 years or older present at your location?
Yes, I can confirm there are none.
And it's due to childcare. Okay, you can move into that.
Perfect. And just a reminder, since we have trustees remote, please turn your microphone on when talking so they can hear you. And please use the Zoom chat option for raising your hand, so I know that you need to speak. Our next item is our approval of the minutes of the March 11th, 2026 meeting. If I can have a motion.
So moved.
Moved, I'll second. And let's please vote.
Okay, Ms. Ginsburg?
Yes.
Ms. Langton?
Yes.
Mr. Kehoe?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Ms. Mee?
Yes.
And Mr. Gatto?
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously.
Great, thank you. Our next item is public comment. Have we received any requests? No requests from the public to speak. We'll move on to our executive update, first with our CIO's report. Mr. Grable.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, trustees. I thought that was an outstanding discussion that we just finished in the Credit Risk Mitigation Committee. And the key takeaway, other than Vache always wanting a greater allocation, which is good. I actually think that speaks well of all our teams, that everyone wants more as opposed to less. If someone wants less, that says something. But I think that the most important point was something that Jason said, that the average yield on our credit portfolio is 8.9%. I think that that's a really important point for us not to lose sight of, given our actuarial assumption is 7, and we're earning on average 8.9%. Each quarter, we're risk mitigating our actuarial assumption. So I think that that's something that we should never lose sight of. So let's start on slide 5, please. So this slide, thank you. This slide is a flash report on the performance of major markets through the end of March. And, what a difference a month makes. As of the end of February, major equity markets were near all-time highs. Not so for March. As we can see on this chart, we have some, rather than deep blue numbers in the chart on the bottom, we have some red numbers. So we can see the equity benchmark, which is the ACWI IMI, which is the top left box. It was down 7.3% for the month of March, and that's notwithstanding a 2% gain on March 31st. So March was a tough month. Our fixed income benchmark did not fare much better. You can see the Bloomberg US Aggregate Bond Index on the top right of this page. It was down 1.8% for the month of March, and 1.8% down is a very big move in a month for investment grade fixed income. So the top row in the table has a row that says reference portfolio. And a reference portfolio is 60% equity, 40% investment grade fixed income. And it is a simple representation of a long-term balanced portfolio. The team discussed, as it related to hedge funds, that we have a non-investable benchmark, given that it's a cash plus a spread that's always positive. Here, 60/40 is investable and effectively is free in that it's the lowest cost, to implement portfolio. That 60/40 reference portfolio, if you look at that row, the 1, 3, 10-year periods has done remarkably well. It's way above our expectations. Not so the case for the month of March, where it was down over 5%. So while I don't have our final numbers yet for the month of March, compared to that reference portfolio, we outperformed. And that's really what we design and why we spend so much time on strategic asset allocation, in that our portfolio is designed, well, it may be down, but it's designed to dramatically outperform that type of reference portfolio in periods of uncertainty. And that's something that we can see. We don't have to go to that slide now, but on slide 9, we show a histogram of how we stack up our monthly returns, and we see that it's skewed positive and that we try to avoid those major drawdowns. So we'll stay in this slide to make one other point, and Dale was very helpful. So thank you, Dale, in terms of pulling together some information for the following conclusion. In months like March of 2026, we unfortunately had a similar discussion in about March of 2025. It was also true March of 2020 with COVID. There's a natural instinct to want to sell equities. Things are not going well, let's run. So if we look on the row below that reference portfolio, it says US large cap stocks, and the index is the S&P 500. I'm going to draw attention to the S&P 500 because it's a large data set and the data goes back a really long time. So hypothetically, if you had invested $10,000 on January 1st or whatever the first trading day of 2000 was, and you stayed invested through 12/31 or whatever the last trading day of 2025, so 25 years of investing, the return was 7.8% annualized. So that $10,000 invested on that first day grew to $76,110. So that's significant growth. If you missed just 10 days, the 10 best returning days over that 25-year period, returns dropped from 7.8% annualized to 4.6% annualized. So a couple other points related to that. So that 10,000, so missing 10 trading days out of a total of, and this was thank you to an AI engine for counting for me, there were 6,782 trading days during that period. So if you miss 10, that's 0.15%. If you think about that in terms of showing up for work and you just miss 10 days over 25 years, you're remarkably healthy. So just, I mean, missing 10 days is insignificant, but those 10 days were dramatically significant as it relates to returns. So rather than generating 76,000, you returned $33,000. And you gave up the vast majority of your profits. Rather than having 7 times your money, you have 3 times your money. So the hypothetical is it's important to stay invested, or maybe not the hypothetical. The proof point is that it's really important to stay invested. And maybe I'll triple underscore this in some ways. Hypothetically, suppose I'm pretty smart. I'm not, but I'm smart because, or I'm informed because I watch business news, I read the papers, I listen to podcasts, I read research reports, and I go to conferences. So I must have a pretty good sense as to when those up and down days are going to happen. And the takeaway from that is nope, because this also is in the data that Dale helped prove, is 6 of the 10 best days during this 25-year period were within 2 weeks of the 10 worst days. So it's completely random and unknown as to, and the last 24 hours, candidly, may be further proof of that. So I think that market timing is very hard. There are material consequences to getting it wrong. And, I'll go back to our investment belief, which highlights the importance, and something that we do practice every single day is it's an imperative to rebalance the portfolio. We try not to time markets, we rebalance the portfolio. And we rebalance it also into headwinds because that's important. Slide 8. So slide 8 is a slide shows the flash report on performance of, oops, pardon me. So this shows the pension fund. I was so excited about that last slide. I just forgot to turn my notes. So this shows the returns for the end of February. The fund was up 1.6% net. Our AUM hit a high water mark, which is fantastic, of $92.1 billion for the pension. Cash is at a very comfortable and methodical $1.3 billion. You can see in the bottom middle of the slide. And there is so much work that goes into maintaining that cash balance of, near $1 billion or slightly above $1 billion. It's a critical number. It's especially critical in down markets. We always need to have cash available. We are cash flow negative as a mature pension, and we don't want to be forced to sell securities at the wrong time. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this slide has more detail about the February fund performance. We can see in the middle bottom, the column that says fiscal year to date. We have nice contribution from all our functional asset categories. And maybe we look at this column or the 3-month or the 1 month next month just to see, because I'm expecting to have greater dispersion in terms of different asset categories performing differently as the market regime may shift and shift back as maybe it's doing today. I'm not sure what the markets are doing right now. Moving to OPEB on slide 13. OPEB was up 1.7% net in February. The market value also hit a high water mark in February of $5.9 billion. If you add the pension and OPEB, we're getting very close to 100 billion in AUM. The one caution to that is our liabilities have already passed, $100 billion. So I think that's something that should always keep us grounded. And next slide, please. So this slide shows a detail about the performance of OPEB's functional asset categories over a variety of time periods. Similar to the pension, fiscal year to date, there is very good contribution from all asset categories. Next month, when we see the performance for the OPEB trust, it's likely that OPEB has had greater impact from the market movements in March. As a reminder, the OPEB trust has greater exposure to public markets. And later this morning, we'll hear an update on the implementation of OPEB's strategic asset allocation. And I'll finish on slide 19. Slide 19, the right-hand column shows our current vacancies. And I will draw your attention to the bottom of that chart that says Finance Analyst Fellowship, 2 positions. We've begun recruiting for our next FA Fellowship class. I'm very excited. I think it's a fantastic program. I encourage all people that are listening to apply, share the opportunity. It's posted on LACERA.gov. And Mr. Chair, I'll pause for questions.
Perfect. Any questions for the CIO? Excellent report. Very much appreciate it and the in-depth analysis. Okay, we're going to move along to our members spotlight.
Thank you very much. Good morning, trustees. The member spotlight is a way for LACERA to recognize the public servants that serve the constituents of Los Angeles County. It's also an opportunity for us to reflect on why we do what we do as we serve the members and empower them to enjoy a healthy and secure retirement. So this month, we're recognizing Pamela Broom, a head custody records clerk for LA County Sheriff's Department, who's retired after 39 years of service. She began her career at a sheriff's station clerk and worked her way up to head custody of records. She is a member of a lot of volunteer organizations, including United Peace Officers Against Crime, which she's been a part of since 1989. They host a lot of summer camps for at-risk youth, which is just a tremendous thing to do. She is looking forward to being on Team Grandma as her grandson's baseball team. And she also plans to support the Dodgers. Yay, go Dodgers! Which, by the way, are having a really good start to their season. And then she's going to start her own nonprofit and continue her public service. So Pamela Broom, we thank you very much for your service. And we hope you enjoy a long, healthy retirement.
I see she didn't do one more year to get her bookends, though. So apparently we got to work on marketing those bookends a little bit better. Thank you. Now the CEO's report.
Yes, good morning, Chair Kehoe. Good morning, trustees. Just a few items on the CEO report first. As we pull it up on slide 3, we have our Board of Retirement offset. I want to make sure I call that out to this particular governing body. It's on May 18th and 19th, and it provides a good overview of our operational and administrative efforts throughout the organization. So the theme is bringing the future into focus. A lot of really good sessions highlighted by some of the survey responses that we received from trustees from the BOR. Secondly, we continue to have our annual stakeholder engagement meetings. Mr. Grable and I, we met with Supervisor Horvath last week. We've so far met with Han's office as well as Barger's office, and we look forward to rounding out our meetings with the remaining 2 supervisors as well as our stakeholder groups. One of the things, and I'll articulate a little bit more next month, in our meetings for both boards is the questions that we've received is just on with respect to Measure G. It's a very transparent process. There's a public website on Measure G. And some of the questions that have been raised to us as it relates to just the governance structure of LACERA. So that's something through the chair, Mr. Kehoe will have a meeting with the board leadership and just talk about, our approach as they begin discussions on their particular process. So more to come there. And then if we can go to slide 5, please. Usually I update this just for the BOR, but I think, when we talk about our mission of produce, protect, and provide the promised benefit, we have 2 main trusts, the OPEB and the pension trust, but we can't leave out the brain trust. And I think that provides a significant portion. March is our highest month in terms of members retiring. And it's important for the investment office and the team to know when we talk about producing the promised benefit that they have a large stake in that collectively. So appreciate the efforts from the professionals in the investment office, but also collectively, organizationally. It's a heavy lift throughout the organization, whether it's within our legal office, our member-facing divisions, and just throughout the organization. So we got through March Madness. We have some residuals. I know we're not done yet, but this just spotlights again, the importance of that promised benefit. So with that, Chair Kehoe, happy to take any questions.
Perfect. Any questions? Okay, hearing none. Thank you so much. Okay, moving on to our non-consent calendars, as we have no items on consent. So our first non-consent item is our private equity consultant services agreement. And it's a recommendation that we approve a 1-year extension for our private equity consulting services. We have a memo dated March 23rd. Any questions on it, or are we ready to take a motion? I'll make a motion for approved staff recommendations.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded.
Okay. Ms. Ginsburg?
Yes.
Ms. Langton?
Yes.
Mr. Kehoe?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Ms. Mead?
Yes.
And Mr. Gatto? Okay, motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, that brings us to our item B, which is a recommendation of the approval of the slate of fiduciary council panel. We have a memo dated March 11th, 2026, and this is based on the ad hoc fiduciary council's recommendation.
Real quick, Mr. Chair, I could not get to the unmute button as quickly as I could, so please mark me down as an aye on that last one as well.
Absolutely, we got
Thank
you. Okay, any questions on item B, or are we ready to entertain a motion? This was adopted by the Board of Retirement as well. Yeah.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, moved and seconded.
Okay.
So please vote.
Ms. Ginsburg?
Yes.
Ms. Langton?
Yes.
Mr. Kehoe?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Ms. Mead?
Yes.
And Mr. Gatto?
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Item C.
Ms. Mead?
Okay. Oh,
I know we're already over, but I still have a comment.
please, please.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Um,
miss.
So this is for fiduciary council, right? Maybe because I'm not on both boards, I'm not familiar with all the work being done by outside counsel. I familiar with some. I want to review, the monthly, bill, the fiduciary council bill, and then I always try to understand it, the cost there. And then when I read the contract, like the materials percentage, the cost, everything, the cost is always like to me, outsider, I'm not in legal area, so I don't understand the market rate there. But from an outsider's perspective, when I'm reading, the hourly rate being like $750 per hour, and in a few years, it's going to be $1,000 per hour. It's just so hard for me to understand. I have family that working as a trauma surgeon that only billing the hospitals about $250, and that $250, and life and death, high stress job, right? And then it baffles me with our society, how we price the divisional work. And then, of course, there's nothing we can change. If this market price, it's market price, right? It's important work. But I have this thought, this idea, like we look at the expense, we're not even finishing the year yet, the whole fiscal year yet. We already have in 610K of expense for outside counsel, for mainly one firm. So that's high, very high. That's not full-time, this is hourly billing and whenever we need. So my thought is there a way, I know we need them, but it's a way that maybe we can have an insight, hire an expertise in-house. I think that amount of spend is more than enough to hire someone full-time as a staff in our team who is excellent, who is good in this kind of work, this type of work. And then in the same time, we still have the outside counsel as a support when we need them. So just a thought, the idea, I'm trying to understand it. I would love to hear, some explanation if there's something feasible.
Fiduciary counsel is expensive. The matters that they work on, however, are matters that have board level visibility, and based on a history of instructions from the board, both boards, and also the fiduciary counsel policy, we seek fiduciary counsel inputs so that when matters go to the board can have the assurance that not only did in-house counsel opine on the matter and advise, but also you have the outside perspective of lawyers hired by the boards on the matters. This past year, the fees have been high because there have been a number of high-profile matters. Most of these are confidential. I don't want to discuss them here, but they're well known to the board. We had some personnel issues. We have two major pieces of board-approved litigation, and those are really the three main contributors. Those two pieces of litigation and the employment matters. There have been other matters. There's an issue regarding this building that's coming to the Jog C in a couple weeks on April 20th. We also got fiduciary counsel involved in that matter to supplement our internal resources and also to provide that additional perspective to the boards. If the monthly fiduciary counsel report gives the boards insight into the specific matters that fiduciary counsel are working on an ongoing matter. And so we provide that information and perspective to you. The fees that LACERA spends on fiduciary counsel is highly variable. This past couple of years, it's been higher than normal because of the matters, the board approved matters that have been necessary. So that's a little bit of perspective. I hope that it helps we do want to economize, and we do where we can. One thing that I think is important to understand with the contract that's approved today, the ad hoc committee did discuss the subject of fees, and we went back to the two high cost firms on the instruction of the ad hoc committee and negotiated rate reductions.
Thank you. Ms. Langton?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that the Board of Retirement had the same concerns and issues, Miss Me, and I was on the fiduciary council committee, but I still have the same concerns and issues.
Is this ticket prices, is this fiduciary counsel more expensive than regular lawyer?
No, they're generally less expensive.
Huh. Wow, lawyer make a lot. I'm still
Not in government.
Moral of the story.
It's hard to imagine.
The use of fiduciary counsel really is driven by the board, and some of the trustees who've been on the board for a long time can attest to this. It may be that there's a need for discussion with the board about the philosophy, the fiduciary counsel policy, and the philosophy behind the use of fiduciary counsel, and we're happy to adapt to this. The level of service that we've been requesting to this time is consistent with prior board direction and the existing policy.
Mr. Jones?
Yeah, just for the benefit of those who weren't on the fiduciary committee and to the members that are listening, we did have the internal debate of the lower cost options. They were clearly the less experienced options. And so, as you might expect, more experienced, more proven attorneys have a higher market rate than those that are not. And so for a fund our size with the transactions that are as complex as they are and the matters, it's the fiduciary bias lies on having the best, most experienced versus the lower cost option that was there. So that's the way that the opinion of the committee fell. But we did talk about the fees, but the firms involved and the attorneys involved are at the top of the pyramid in terms of their expertise and experience. So,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, if I might add, the individual lawyers who are serving as fiduciary counsel for us in these large firms are providing us at a discounted rate from the other attorneys in the same firm. So we are getting what they call a government rate, which is lower than the attorneys who are in those large firms who are doing private practice.
And another thing to consider, I mean, we just broke 200,000 members as an organization. We just broke $98 billion in assets under management. We have a lot of responsibility, and that 600,000 invested in the attorneys saves us countless dollars in additional costs and lawsuits and other things that could ultimately impact us. So it's a balancing act, and we absolutely do need to keep our eye on making sure that costs don't grow out of control. And I know the fiduciary council is listening, and they heard both sides of the board, so I think they know that they're kind of encroaching on that high level that's getting us out of our comfort zone. But they do serve a very, very important part for us, and it is critical to have somebody from outside of the organization to look in and give guidance to both our council and the board. So, but I think the message has been loud and clear, and hopefully we do a good job at balancing that. So. Perfect, thank you. Okay, we're gonna move on to item C, which is the approval of the LACERA and SEIU MOU bargaining units 850 and 851 tentative agreements. And if there's no objection, we'll also include item D, which is for the non-represented. So if we can do a, okay, please, if you have any questions on since we have questions, go ahead and stick with item C. So item C, this is for the SIU 850, 851.
First, congratulations to everyone, not just represented, also a non-represented. I say too early congratulations, we haven't moved yet. But congrats in advance. My question is that I see that the increase is going to start in January 1st, 2026, and we're approving right now, voting right now, right? How does it work? Do we go back to retrofit the payment that already went out?
Yes, the payment will be retroactive.
Okay, that's all my question.
And there is a process to that, and maybe if you could just spotlight briefly the process after the board's approve.
Yeah, sure. Good morning. After the board approval, the items will be sent to our office of our legal office to be transmitted to the office of the county. I was about to say county general. That's not the name of the office. It's a general counsel, the office of general counsel at the county. They will distribute it amongst various county departments to be reviewed. So it'll go to Department of Human Resources, it will go to Auditor Controller, and of course they'll have a legal review. Once all of those things are sorted, pending no questions, no follow-ups, it will be agendized for the Board of Supervisors. Once ratified by the Board of Supervisors, it will be sent back to the Auditor Controller to implement into EHR for the payment to then be processed.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Some questions? Okay, so let's stick with item C. We'll need a motion for that.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Let's please vote.
Thank you. Ms. Ginsburg, Ms. Langton, Mr. Kehoe,
Aye.
Mr. Jones,
Yeah, aye.
Ms. Me,
Yes.
and Mr. Gatto.
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you. And we'll need a motion for item D, which is for the non-represented management staff.
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Let's please vote.
Okay, Ms. Ginsburg, Ms. Langton,
Aye.
Mr. Kehoe,
Aye.
Mr. Jones,
Aye.
Ms. Me,
Aye.
and Mr. Gatto.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. We are moving on to item 8, which is our reports.
Through the chair, my
Yes.
apologies. I do want to thank the individuals from employee labor representatives that were involved. So from our labor representatives, Lindsay Knight, Latanya Robinson, and Anthony Batiste representing SEIU local 721, excuse me.
Thank you to everybody involved. I apologize. I should have said that myself. And also let's make sure this is a good recruiting tool out there. Let the rest of the county know they can come work for us. We're slightly less drama. Okay, item 8, reports. We will be setting up here for the OPEB Master Trust. Good morning. You guys can take it away whenever you are ready.
All right. Thank you. Good morning, Chair Kehoe and trustees. So before turning to today's materials, I'd like to briefly frame the purpose of today's agenda item. This item provides a high-level overview and an implementation update on the OPEB Master Trust. No board action is requested at this time. However, as the implementation of the trust progresses and the portfolio moves closer to the board-approved policy targets, particularly within the private markets portfolios, we plan to return to the board with proposed guidelines in the future for consideration, similar to the approach used for the total fund. In the meantime, the OPEB Master Trust continues to be implemented in alignment with the board-approved framework, policy targets, and parameters established to date. Currently, the trust is primarily invested in passive public market index mandates, which we'll talk about further in the presentation, with each mandate operating under the terms of its respective agreements. With that background, I'll flip to, or Catherine's already flipped to the overview slide. Thank you, Catherine. As a reminder from last month's Board of Investments meeting, when we talked about performance, the OPEB Master Trust is legally distinct from the pension plan. And as you can see here, it's governed by its own board-approved investment policy statement. Today's presentation will highlight how the trust has evolved since its inception in 2012 and our continued progress towards implementing OPEB's strategic asset allocations. We'll review the transition from an all-cash portfolio to a more diversified program with a focus on the measured build-out of private markets, a key component of the board's long-term policy framework. This context is especially important as the board begins evaluating a new strategic asset allocation for OPEB later this year alongside the pension plan. I'll now turn it over to Catherine Ton and Tolkien Takeshova, who will dig deeper into OPEB's evolution, implementation update, and next steps.
Thanks, Kwok, and good morning, Chair Kehoe and trustees. I'll begin by walking through the evolution of the OPEB Trust, focusing on how it has grown in both size and structure. The chart at the top of the page illustrates the trust's growth in market value over time. Since 2013, assets have increased from under $500 million to nearly $5.7 billion by 2025. This represents approximately $5.3 billion in growth, driven by a combination of investment returns and ongoing contributions from Los Angeles County, LACERA, and the Superior Court. The bottom half of the page highlights a timeline of key policy and implementation milestones. This timeline connects asset growth directly to the board's decisions, beginning with the trust's establishment in 2012 to the creation of the pooled OPEB Master Trust in 2016, to the subsequent strategic asset allocation approvals in 2017, 2021, and 2024. As the trust reached greater scale, the board approved important enhancements to the program, including the addition of private markets and the introduction of overlays and hedging strategies to improve liquidity and risk management. In addition, LACERA has built the expertise and infrastructure necessary to support the trust's long-term objectives. Following multiple competitive searches, BlackRock and State Street were engaged to manage the trust's public market and cash assets. Parametric was selected to support overlay and implementation strategies, and Hamilton Lane was hired to implement the trust's private markets program. Overall, the trust's growth reflects a deliberate, phased approach guided by the board and LACERA, with governance, diversification, and implementation evolving alongside the trust's increasing size and complexity. Slide 5 shows how the board-approved investment strategy for the OPEB trust has evolved over time. In the early years, the portfolio was invested entirely in cash and public markets. In 2017, the board adopted a functional strategic asset allocation framework. This established a clear framework for the portfolio with distinct categories covering growth, credit, inflation hedges, and risk reduction and mitigation. Then in 2021, the board approved the addition of private markets with an 18% policy allocation. This marked an important step in broadening the investment approach beyond traditional public markets. Shortly after, Hamilton Lane was hired as the trust's separate account manager for the private markets program. In 2024, the board further strengthened this approach by increasing the private markets allocation to 21%. Today, the portfolio remains primarily invested in liquid public assets, complemented by a meaningful allocation to the long-term private investments to support diversification and return objectives. Slide 6 shows two heat maps side by side. The left heat map reflects where the trust is invested today, while the right heat map shows where the portfolio is expected to be over the long term, based on the board-approved policy targets. In both heat maps, the gray shading represents the trust's functional categories. Within each category, public market investments are shown in teal, and private market investments are shown in dark blue. As you can see, the teal shading highlights the trust's strong public market exposure, which continues to provide stability and liquidity. The difference in the dark blue shading across the two heat maps reflect the gradual build-out of private markets. While the board has approved a 21% allocation to private markets, reaching that target takes time under a multi-year implementation plan. Staff are continuing to work closely with Hamilton Lane, the trust's separate account manager, to do so. Together, these visuals show how the trust maintains a solid public market foundation while progressively building a more diversified long-term portfolio. I'll now hand it over to Tolkien to cover performance.
Thank you, Catherine. Good morning, Chair and trustees. And I will start on a positive note. The trust has delivered strong and consistent results. It is important to emphasize here that this performance reflects a portfolio that is still predominantly public market oriented as private markets continue to be built out. Now let's turn to the numbers. Since inception, the trust has outperformed its actuarial rate of return across all time periods and outperformed its policy benchmark over the 3, 5, 10 years and since inception period. Importantly, over the past 5 years, this outperformance has translated into approximately 342 million above the actuarial target and approximately 118 million net above the policy benchmark. Turning now to private markets in more details. So this slide combines two views of the private markets program, committed capital and market value. It also shows the progress in private markets, both as a share of total trust assets and relative to the private markets policy target. And all the numbers and figures on this slide are as of December 31st, 2025. So starting with the bar chart on the left of the slide, you can see committed capital by asset class expressed as a percentage of the trust. As a reminder, a commitment represents the amount the trust has agreed to invest with the manager. But that capital is not invested all at once. Rather, it is drawn down by managers over time as opportunities are identified. When we look across all private market asset classes combined, the trust has committed approximately 10% of total assets. And that means 11% of the trust remains to be committed to reach the policy target of 21%. Looking to the dial in the center, the 10% committed today represents about half of the total private markets target, which is what the first dial is illustrating here. Moving to the dial on the right, this shows private markets exposure based on market value, or the current value of capital that has been invested to date. Based on market value, the portfolio reflects approximately 22% progress towards 21% private markets allocation target. And the difference between these two figures is expected and reflects where we are in the implementation cycle. Commitments are made upfront and capital is deployed gradually over multiple years through manager drawdowns. And as Katrin noted earlier, the trust is now in year 4 of a 5-year implementation plan. We will continue to work closely with Hamilton Lane to progress toward the private markets policy target. And finally, I want to note that private markets performance is included in the appendix. And while the program is still relatively new and performance is naturally in the early J-curve phase, we've included that information for transparency as the portfolio continues to mature. I will speak at a high level on overlays and hedges here because the next board item will cover this topic in more details. So in 2024, the board authorized the addition of overlays and hedges at the 5th functional category, reflecting the growing scale and sophistication of the trust. Since that approval, the focus has been on laying the foundational elements of the program. In 2025, an RFP for a passive cash overlay manager was completed, and the incumbent provider for the total fund was retained to implement cash overlay program for the OPEB Master Trust. Importantly, this phase has been deliberate and foundational. It focused on structure, policy alignment, and implementation design. We expect to bring cash and cash overlay investment guidelines to the board at a future meeting once implementation details are finalized. I will close with a brief summary and next steps. So since its initial funding in 2013, the trust has evolved from a cash-based program into a well-diversified program. It delivered strong performance relative to both actuarial and policy benchmarks and continued progressing toward its long-term strategic targets. Looking ahead, as the private markets allocation approaches the 21% policy target, we expect to return to the board with proposed investment guidelines for the trust. And the timing of these guidelines is expected to follow the board's consideration of a new strategic asset allocation for the trust. And at that time, staff will also evaluate implementation options, including whether to continue utilizing an external separate account manager or transition the private markets program in-house. So in the interim, as Kwok mentioned earlier, the trust continues to be implemented in accordance with the board-approved framework, policy targets, and parameters currently in place. And that concludes our presentation, and we are happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Nicole?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I always feel like I focus on the other fund so much that I don't know enough about OPEB Trust. So this is really helpful to help me understand even better. I have a question on how this is started. Sorry. So if I understand correctly, like this fund is started by $400 million of pre-funded, fund from county employer, right? So then we start investing. Do they have annual, inflow of deposit and in advance of the payment that we have to pay the benefits so that we can take advantage of the gap in the time that investment on? How does it work?
Yes, Christine, me. So on a quarterly cadence, we get contributions from LA County It's about 97.5% of the OPEB portfolio. And then the balance between LACERA and the Superior Court is the remaining 2.5% of contributions.
But yeah, but we do get quarterly contributions from the plan sponsors. And then we haven't made any distributions since we first began investing back in.
Oh, I thought this is paying the retiree healthcare benefits.
It's
No.
pre-funding.
Yeah, it's pre-funding.
It's being
the future
used to
benefits.
offset the actuarial cost of the plan. So by having this balance and being able to calculate out the growth, it's reducing the future costs. So it's money that they can use in the future, but they're not currently using it because they want it to grow.
I'm still confused. What was it?
Yeah, so maybe just rewinding all the way back to, let's say, 2012. On an annual basis, the county or the plan sponsors would fund OPEB benefits on a pay-go basis, just pay as you go. They were never pre-funding a plan for the future to pay, to have the money in a say fund to pre-fund the liabilities that arise from having this benefit. And so in 2012, that's when they first set up this vehicle so that they can start pre-funding the future benefits. And so that's where we are today. So we're roughly 5.8 billion today. And even that, I think John mentioned in the CIO comments that the actuarial liabilities for this plan is, I think it's either close to 100 billion or over 100 billion. So we're just kind of pre-funding that liability or just funding that liability for the future for these benefits. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say
20 billion. I misheard.
I was going to say that.
Thank goodness it's not that high. Okay, 20 billion. Okay.
So our goal is to reach in 100% funding ratio, 200 billion liability that we have in the benefit. The healthcare benefit payments, right?
Yes. So that actuarial rate of return for the OPEB trust is 6.25%. And so that's a target. And so that's applied the same way the total fund is applied as far as like reaching that return over the next, I think it's like 20 or 30 years so that we can fully fund this plan.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you everyone for explaining. I think I understand better. One more question. I was reading the materials trying to understand the operational model of this fund compared with our pension fund, the bigger pension fund. I see that we're hiring manager, BlackRock, Hamilton Lane. Do we outsource, this fund to manage? Like why we set the assets allocation, they take over from there in comparison to how we normally manage our pension fund that we have inside team in area assets class and doing the implementation.
Right. So for this vehicle, as we talked about earlier, it's primarily passively indexed. And that mandate is through BlackRock. So there's various asset categories that are indexed, such as global equities, various credit strategies like high yield and bank loans, REIT index for real estate. But then in 2021, that's when the board approved an allocation to private markets. And then at that point, that's when LACERA did a search and then hired Hamilton Lane as a separate account manager to help deploy that allocation to private markets. So that's the framework that we have today. And the portfolio analytics team helps to kind of oversee the OPEB portfolio and those relationships. Right now, there's only 4 relationships, and then the parametric relationship is a mandate that just got approved for the OPEB Master Trust. So in the next agenda item, you'll hear some additional information about that program that's going to be expected to be deployed over the coming months.
And similar to what Kwok mentioned for the private markets program, we do work alongside Hamilton Lane. We have a PA committee where we do have rotational members within the total fund too, where we do take funds to the committee for approval for the Hamilton Lane.
That's what I want to hear. I was thinking like, how much control do we have there? Do we just give the money and walk away, or we have control?
We do, and then ultimately, it's a team decision.
Great, excellent. Thank you so much. And that's all question I have, Chair.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Okay, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, we are moving on to item B, which is the cash equivalents, cash overlay, and currency hedge, total fund, and OPEB master trust overview. Whenever you're ready. Oops, sorry, just gotta flip back to my-
All right, thank you. So the purpose of this item is similar to the prior agenda item in that it focuses on board education in advance of bringing formal investment guideline recommendations at a future meeting. Specifically, this discussion covers 3 related programs: the cash equivalents, cash overlay, and the global equity currency hedge. As a reminder, the board received a broader education session on overlays and hedges at the June board meeting last year. We've included a link to that meeting and timestamp on page 4 of this presentation for any trustee who would like to revisit that discussion. We're bringing this education item forward at this time because LACERA completed the passive cash overlay RFP for both the total fund and OPEB master trust. And when we conducted the education session last year, we noted that staff would return with proposed investment guidelines after we completed that RFP. So with that process now complete, this is an appropriate time to further discuss the roles of these programs, consider program enhancements, and provide context for forthcoming guideline recommendations. At present, the cash overlay continues to operate under the framework and parameters originally approved in 2019. I'd also like to clarify that the currency hedge applies to only the total fund. It is designed specifically to reduce active currency risk within the global equity portfolio, primarily in developed non-US markets. The OPEB Master Trust does not currently utilize a currency hedge, as its global equity exposure, as we just talked about, is implemented through a passive mandate. And Dale will provide more detail on the currency hedge later in the discussion. So again, no action is requested today. This presentation is intended solely to provide context and education so that the board is well prepared when staff returns with formal guideline recommendations in the future. To provide further context for this discussion, the timeline highlights how LACERA's cash equivalents, cash overlay, and currency hedge programs have evolved over time. The total funds passive global equity currency hedge was initiated in 2010 and remains in place today. In 2019, following multiple board education sessions, LACERA implemented a passive cash overlay program to help maintain policy exposures while managing cash balances. In 2020, cash equivalence mandates for both the total fund and OPEB Master Trust were updated to improve liquidity and better support business continuity needs. Then, as the cash overlay and currency hedge programs matured, the board approved overlays and hedges as a 5th functional category for the total fund in 2021, and the OPEB Master Trust, as Token mentioned, in 2024, as part of the strategic asset allocation exercises. And in 2025, we show that the overlay and hedges board education was provided, and then we show the YouTube link below, and that the cash overlay RFP that I just mentioned was completed. And looking ahead for this year, we plan to return to the board with proposed investment guidelines for these programs. Turning to program roles and objectives. On the left, you'll see that cash equivalents fall within the risk reduction and mitigation functional category, as Vache mentioned this morning. Cash is the least volatile asset class in the portfolio. It serves as a primary source of liquidity and supports day-to-day operations. In contrast, the cash overlay and global equity currency hedge are part of overlays and hedges. The cash overlay shown in the middle column is designed to improve portfolio efficiency by keeping the total fund aligned with its board-approved policy weights, reducing tracking error, and minimizing cash drag. In upcoming slides, we'll talk about how the cash equivalence program and cash overlay work hand in hand together. For the global equity currency hedge on the right, its objective is to reduce exchange rate risk, lower volatility from currency movements, and protect returns when foreign currencies depreciate against the US dollar. This page shows the board-approved policy targets for both plans. The total fund has a 1% policy allocation to cash equivalents, while the OPEB Master Trust maintains a 2% cash policy target, reflecting its different liquidity profile. The overlays and hedges functional category has a 0% policy allocation for both plans, which reflects the fact that these programs are implemented using fully collateralized instruments and do not employ leverage. It is important to note that overlays and hedges function as passive portfolio implementation tools rather than active return-seeking mandates. The first section we'll cover is cash equivalents. This topic is relevant to today's discussion because of how it works alongside the cash overlay. At a high level, LACERA is able to maintain sufficient liquidity, approximately 3 months of benefit payments, while the overlay operates in the background to mitigate the performance drag that typically comes with holding excess cash. Now, before moving into the details of the overlay, it's helpful to briefly review the role of cash equivalents. This asset class sits at the base of the functional category pyramid and represents the lowest risk component of the portfolios. I'll just note that the risk shown here from lowest to highest as far as asset categories is not to scale. It's more for illustration purposes. For both the total fund and OPEB Master Trust, cash is foundational, supporting all other asset categories. It helps mitigate risk, enhance diversification, and serves as the operational backbone of the plans. From a practical standpoint, cash equivalents enable LACERA to meet several critical objectives. They provide liquidity for benefit payments, support capital calls for private markets, allow the portfolio to rebalance as markets move, and ensure that LACERA can meet its daily operational needs. During periods of market stress, cash also acts as a stabilizer, dampening volatility and helping preserve flexibility. Importantly, cash works in tandem with the cash overlay program, allowing the total fund's excess cash to maintain market exposure while keeping sufficient liquidity on hand. This page summarizes the key characteristics of cash equivalents for both plans. As shown in the top two charts, the total fund and OPEB Master Trust have consistently maintained healthy cash balances over time. For example, the total fund regularly maintains a cash balance of over $1 billion, which equates to roughly 3 months of benefit payments. The cash equivalence mandates are intentionally conservative, investing in very liquid and high quality assets, as you can see in the table to the bottom left, which describe their existing characteristics. The main takeaway is that LACERA's cash programs prioritize safety, liquidity, and reliability over return. Their purpose is not to enhance performance, but to ensure that the plans can function smoothly through all market environments. And as you can see on the bottom right, as a next step for this program, we plan to bring proposed investment guidelines at a future date. So now we turn to the cash overlay program. And for context, when staff and Makita provided board education last year, we noted that roughly a quarter of large public plans with assets over $50 billion use a cash overlay program in a similar way. To better understand the overlay's role, it is helpful to start with LACERA's rebalancing framework, as John talked about this morning. As you know, strategic asset allocation drives the majority of long-term returns. LACERA's investment beliefs support disciplined rebalancing to stay aligned with those board-approved strategic targets as we describe in that middle blue box. The total fund is rebalanced at least monthly to move back towards policy targets while ensuring sufficient liquidity is maintained to cover at least 3 months of benefit payments and ongoing operations. The cash overlay complements this process by operating daily. The overlay manager continuously monitors portfolio exposures and identifies asset category drifts caused by market movements. The process involves 3 core steps, as you can see on the left: measuring exposure drift, implementing rebalance trades, and ongoing monitoring and reporting. This slide dives a bit deeper into the three stages. Once exposure drift is identified and measured in the first stage, the overlay manager uses exchange traded futures or derivative securities to efficiently adjust portfolio exposures at the functional category level, which is the second stage. These futures allow LACERA to align the portfolio with its policy targets without having to immediately buy or sell underlying assets. Importantly, all cash overlay securities are exchange traded and centrally cleared, which limit counterparty risk to near zero. Then in the third stage, oversight is maintained at multiple levels. LACERA staff monitors cash flows, manager activity, capital calls, and distributions on a daily basis. The overlay manager has visibility into custodial accounts to assess portfolio exposures and performance rebalance trades if necessary. Detailed monitoring reports are provided regularly and are used by staff for ongoing oversight. Examples of these reports are included in the appendix for reference. So we'll close out the discussion of the cash overlay by reviewing its results. On the left side of the page, the chart and table show that since the program was launched in 2019, the cash overlay has added more than $670 million in value to the total fund. This reflects the benefit of maintaining market exposure for excess cash that is held for liquidity needs. On the upper right chart, focusing on the most recent bars or the bars to the right, we can also see that the overlay has helped the portfolio stay much closer to the board-approved functional category targets. Since inception, tracking error has been reduced by nearly 50%, demonstrating that the overlay's effectiveness in keeping the portfolio aligned with policy targets and reducing overall total fund risk. And as we mentioned, now that the cash overlay RFP has completed, we plan to return to the board with proposed investment guidelines that formalize these practices. For example, the guidelines would include requirements that the overlay be fully collateralized, used strictly as a risk management and implementation tool, then a tactical return-seeking tool, that rebalancing activity aligns with policy targets rather than active forecast, and that the program supports maintaining approximately 3 months of benefit payments for liquidity needs. Now, while the overlay has operated under this framework since its approval in 2019, our next steps is to document them clearly in formal written guidelines. I'll now turn the discussion over to Dale to walk through the global equity currency hedge.
Thank you, Kwok. Good morning, Chair and trustees. I'm going to provide an overview of the global equity passive currency hedge. We will start with the purpose and structure, walk through the implementation, and then provide a quick summary of the results. Beginning with the purpose, we're going to have to travel back in time a little bit on that timeline slide back before 2010 to 2009, when the Board of Investments approved a strategic asset allocation that had a total target to the total fund of global equity of 52%. Of that 52%, the target to international stocks in the portfolio, this is the total fund, was 30%. Of that, 24% was to develop market stocks. So as you can imagine, that exposure of the total fund to international stocks and hence currencies could have some impact on total fund volatility and returns. So the board adopted in 2010 and implemented a currency hedge program. That program that we started with then is still in place today. So the objective of the global equity passive currency hedge is to reduce the exchange rate risk, decrease of currency volatility associated with that exposure, hopefully improving risk-adjusted returns, and preserve the benefits of a globally diversified public equity portfolio. So moving on to implementation. With respect to global equity, LACERA employs a passive 50% hedge on developed market currency exposures. Emerging markets are excluded due to their high costs. The manager for the program is BlackRock. As Kwok mentioned, for the cash overlay, it's parametric, so it's a different manager for this program. BlackRock uses 90-day currency forwards to efficiently achieve the exposure that they need. And those are rolled every 30 days as a third of those contracts expire. So for risk management, it's very important when this program was set up, and it's still very important today. There are 6 counterparties involved. They are all highly rated. There is a limited of 33% exposure to each counterparty, and currently they are only exposed between 15 and 20%. So it's diversified across all 6 with none of them having any outsized exposure. And currently we're hedging about $3.9 billion out of nearly $8 billion non-US developed markets portfolio exposure. So monthly, we're receiving reports from the manager. We're also downloading those positions, reconciling them, making sure that the reporting that we're receiving from the manager is correct. We're verifying the counterparty's ratings. We're doing all that validation ourselves as well. So I'm going to move on to the implementation. It's similar to the process that Kwok outlined for the cash overlay, where after the month end, we're evaluating the developed market exposures of the global equity portfolio and aggregating those. We're sending those numbers to BlackRock to reevaluate where our positions are based upon our current exposures through the currency forwards. As that 1/3 expires that month, they are looking at those underlying exposures, taking note of any changes in the portfolio, currency movements, and with the new forwards that they are purchasing, they're adjusting our positions to be neutral at that 50%. So when they're doing that, if the dollar is appreciated over the prior periods, we're going to receive funds back. If the dollar is depreciated, we're going to be sending money to BlackRock at settlement in order to offset those losses. Here I'm showing the results from the global equity currency hedge. Since inception of August 2010, the fund has produced about 1.6 billion in cash inflows to the LACERA fund. And we can see in the bottom left chart, the more recent time periods ending January 31st, where we've received about 22 million in receipts for the month to date of January, quarter to date, and fiscal year to date. On the top right, we're showing some recent performance of select non-developed market currencies. Here you can see the US dollar depreciated 1.4% in January, whereas the Swiss franc and British pound depreciated by 2.5 and 1.6% respectively. But over the past year, the dollar has lost over 10%. The Swiss franc and the euro have appreciated by over 17 and 14% respectively. So with respect to the program itself, the program has met its objectives as defined in construction at the inception of August 2010 to reduce currency exchange rate risk, improve risk-adjusted returns by reducing currency volatility, while maintaining the diversification of a global equity portfolio. With the passive global equity currency hedge has operated under this framework since its inception, our next step is to document the program in formal written guidelines. I will now pass it back to Kwok to wrap it up.
Thank you, Dale. And just to summarize, the 3 programs, the cash equivalence, cash overlay, and global currency hedge programs have met their objectives. Collectively, they have helped support adherence with total fund policy objectives and targets and reduce portfolio risk. At the same time, the cash overlay and currency hedge programs have generated approximately $2.3 billion in gains since its program inception. And to reiterate, today's discussion is to provide the board with context and education in advance of considering investment guidelines. So as the cash overlay RFP is now complete, we are working with the overlay manager to evaluate program enhancements for the total fund and enhance the cash overlay program to the OPEB Master Trust. As we do so, we will bring formal guidelines to the board at a future meeting for consideration. And with that, we're happy to stand for questions.
Just a quick question. If we do extend it for the total portfolio, is that a separate RFP? Or is that included in their existing?
So it's going to be extended to the OPEB Master Trust is the plan. And that that RFP that we ran last year and completed was for the rehire or the rebid of cash overlay services for the total fund, and then cash overlay services for the OPEB master trust. So that's already completed. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Questions, Ms. Langton?
Thank you. Great presentation. Other than for, risk mitigation, I guess is the right terminology. We don't need to take cash out of the OPEB. So we don't need liquidity in there specifically, correct?
Right now, the cash target to OPEB is 2%, and that was elected by the plan sponsors, just given its liquidity profile. We have not sent distributions back to the plan sponsor in OPEB, but it is also uncertain as far as their cash needs in the future. This overlay implementation for the OPEB master trust is just to make is just to operate the portfolio more efficiently by investing excess cash and helping to align the portfolio with its board approved policy targets. So sorry.
Yeah, through the chair, appreciate the question, Trustee Langton. So right now, the county is pre-funding and they're looking to get to their ADC, their actual determined contribution. We are working on an OPEB funding policy that will address some of these issues in terms of distribution and minimum funding level, because we want to make sure the account stays there to grow as opposed to accessing it, because it defeats the purpose of being able to get away from pay-go.
But we do, in response to that question, we do have a cash portion, and this overlay will help with that, optimizing it. So there will be a benefit to applying this to the OPEB.
Correct.
Additional questions? Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for the presentation. Great work. Okay, this is going to bring us to item C, our upcoming trustee surveys for Board of Investment offsite and strategic review. And that is a discussion led by Mr. Grable.
Pardon me while I set up. We were just doing a little square dance or something. I don't think anyone would want to see me square dance. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So trustees recently completed a survey ranking offsite topics. So thank you for completing that survey. We will come back to the board with a draft agenda for the offsite based upon those results, and that will be at a future meeting. This agenda topic relates to two additional sessions at the offsite, one on governance and one on strategic initiatives. These two sessions are scheduled based upon board action taken at the January meeting. So in preparation for those two sessions, we'll be conducting two additional surveys, one on governance and one on our strategic initiatives. So if we can turn to slide 3. For the governance topic, the survey that will be distributed will come from Makita. And this slide highlights some of the potential areas for the Board of Investments to give input to Tim and the team at Makita. Some of those topics will relate to meeting materials and meeting effectiveness, as well as trustee education. On the right side of the slide, the Board of Investment strategic initiatives are highlighted. That is our allocator to best-in-class investor framework. And as we discussed in January, there is the potential to refresh that framework and discuss our progress, potentially changing some of the goals, simplifying it, and clarifying the Board of Investment's risk tolerances. The final slide in this presentation discusses or shows a timeline. And as we pull up slide 4, thank you. So we will be launching both of these surveys later this month, prior to them being distributed, we will work with the Board of Investments leadership in order to clarify all questions that are being asked. Subsequent to that survey being distributed, there may be some follow-up questions or clarifications asked of trustees over the next several months, but that's only to the extent that it's necessary to prepare for those two distinct sessions that will occur at the offsite. The governance session will be facilitated by Makita, and the strategic framework discussion at the offsite will be facilitated by staff, maybe me. And then subsequent to the offsite, there's the potential for Board of Investment actions later this year based upon the surveys and the discussions at the offsite. And that concludes the presentation.
Great, thank you. Any questions from any members of the board? Hearing none. Thank you very much. Looking forward to those surveys and engagement. Okay. We're going to move to item D, the building of culture of excellence and engagement by Mr. Lugo.
Just give me a second while I share real estate here.
Of course, of course.
Okay, good morning again, Chair Kehoe, trustees. Happy to have John here beside me. Presented this presentation last week to the Board of Retirement and obviously this week to the Board of Investments. Obviously, we have two governing bodies, but one mission at LACERA, as we like to say, one LACERA, and culture is at the forefront of that. I know one of our key responsibilities as it relates to leaders in the organization is how do we translate vision, strategy, and connect that to individual performance and performance across the organization. And more importantly, creating an environment where people are motivated, are empowered, and inspired to do their best work. Culture gets talked about a lot. It's at its core, in my opinion, it's pretty simple. It isn't what we say, it's what people experience every day. And everyone has a collective responsibility. Those that sit on the dais, the team here, the leadership team, and obviously the staff collectively all have a responsibility on how our work environment is informed. But I will say from a leadership standpoint, what we model, what leaders model gets multiplied by teams, whether positive or negative. So our responsibility is to make sure that that experience is consistent, aligned, and worthy of the trust placed in us in our positions. So in this morning, I'll walk through our current efforts as it relates to the engagement survey that was conducted in July, and also discuss how we continue to set the foundation for long-term organizational excellence moving forward. If we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So briefly, we'll walk through how we got here, a timeline, ground the importance on why culture is important, share what we've heard, both from the engagement survey and a focus group, show what we're doing and initiatives underway, and lastly, define how we sustain accountability moving forward. Next slide, please. So prior to the engagement survey conducted in July 2025, I do want to level set on a couple of key milestones that we had organizationally. First is back in 2022 and 2023, we went through a Board of Retirement strategic plan effort. Through that effort, we reimagined our values. So we've transitioned our values, and we have 6 core values that we implemented late in, as a result of the approval of the strategic plan, but also the approval of those respective values. Through that strategic planning effort, we also had the focus around our ethics and compliance program, and that's been developed and matured over the last 2.5 years. And one of the main areas of focus within that ethics and compliance program is bringing back our engagement survey. We had an engagement survey that was conducted in 2021. Unfortunately, we didn't take action on what was on the results of that survey. So we were intentional in making sure we conducted this survey in-house, anonymously, and making sure that we were deliberative on certain actions with that particular survey. Moving through the timeline after the engagement survey, we quickly shared those results to our staff. We also had focus groups that followed up on that survey in November, and then there was a pointed presentation to the audit compliance, risk, and ethics committee in November. And I highly suggest if you haven't seen that presentation, Christina Logan, in conjunction with our Armand from HR, presented the results of that survey, and it provides really good detail and context on what was communicated by staff. So that was done in November. We also had follow-up meetings at our management offsite to really lay out an intentional plan moving forward. Next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of our business case, so we've talked about culture is not soft. It's obviously drives performance. It's a lever for us. It's a strategic lever. I'm going to transition now to John, really to speak specifically around investments and how he goes about leading the investment team. So John.
Thank you, Louis. I want to be careful with what I'm about to say, in that I don't want this to appear like a celebration. I think in some sense, celebrations don't age well. And I think that maybe the business case for organizational culture, for there to be a really good culture, and for, as the slide says at the top, for something to be the strategic driver of results, every day is an opportunity. And maybe it's more than an opportunity, it's an imperative that each day you approach as, your potential best day yet, only to be, for changes to occur subsequent to that. So in the investment policy statement, where we house our investment beliefs, we have one that says people matter. And if I can be so bold, I think it's missing a word, and that word is most. People matter most. I think while the investment division, while the Board of Investments, we manage financial capital, the most important resource in order to get the best outcomes from that financial capital as it relates to our mission to our members is people. So in investment talk, people are our most durable form of alpha. And once again, I think that reinforces, and enhances our mission to our members. So, while I'm not a fan of slideware or merch, I think it somewhat trivializes the topic of the importance of culture. I think some of the things I'm about to discuss maybe are more than celebrating and flagging our basic expectations. I think that we trivialize culture if we reward ourselves and celebrate just doing the basic level function, the basic level job. I think that's a expectation, that's a given, that's not an objective. So some of the actions that we've taken in the investment division to build culture are, follow. And before I go through some of them, I think it's important to acknowledge that we are in a reality post-COVID where this is a hybrid organization. I think that's an expectation of the workforce. Maybe it changes. I'm not making any announcement today. I'm not, but we are solidly in a work from home and a work from the office environment. So with that said, in the investment division, some of the things that we're doing to try to enhance culture in order to get the best outcomes possible for our members is, maybe it starts, in the name, is that and I'm smiling as I say this, we have Culture Day. Culture Day is the third Thursday of every month. It's a day in the office. The focus of Culture Day is not on managers, but ourselves. To the extent there's an emergency, I just want to speak very clearly into the microphone. We don't ignore and we don't say, no, it's Culture Day, we can't focus on the portfolio. But the primary focus of Culture Day is the LACERA investment division as a team. How we improve our craft. We have an all-staff meeting. Anyone in the division can agendize a topic. We rotate who chairs that meeting through the entire division. So I think I've only done it once, but and part of what we focus on in Culture Days are those soft skills that are really important, because it's easy to have easy conversations. The portfolio is beating expectations. Well, that's really easy to say. To the extent it's not, that's much harder. to say. And I think that by interacting with one another in agenda adjacent conversations, we learn how to practice those harder conversations. So that's Culture Day. The second item we have, and this actually was yesterday's, the second Tuesday. The second Tuesday is a day focused on senior staff and more recent hires. And for purposes of second Tuesdays, which is a day in the office, we're defining recent hires as first 2 years at LACERA. And going back to the notion that we're a hybrid organization, I believe that we've lost some of our connection as a team, probably larger as a society, from the work from home environment that we're in. So the second Tuesday is designed to build connectivity from people that may not have been here as long with those that, you know, many of us have been here the longest. So we have Culture Day, second Tuesdays. Some of the other things that we do include our quarterly performance review, and that happens, as is in the name, each quarter. It's a half-day session to review the portfolio in its entirety. It includes all staff. It is run by the team below the senior investment officer level. And I think that this is imperative. I think this goes back to a question that Ms. Mee asked about, well, does the credit team talk to the private equity team because they're related? I think that we all need to have that type of thinking. We all need to think like investors. We need to identify what is working. We need to have that harder discussion about what is below expectations, and what our key areas of focus are. And I think that the quarterly performance review really helps build, go back to the slide, a culture of accountability, or helps build it. And, you know, I think, we all think that it should bother everyone when we're below our benchmark. That's painful. I don't sleep well when we're below benchmarks. Likewise, I think that we should look to replicate and enhance the positives. That, well, if something may be ahead of benchmark, is it just luck in terms of, you know, do we have a nice tailwind, or is it something that we're doing strategically, tactically, as it relates to fees, structures, you name it. And I think that the quarterly performance review, and this went through many fits and starts. It was, I think, an uncomfortable exercise for the division when we started it. But 5 years or so in, I think it's helped to raise the bar for all of us, for especially for me, as it relates to building that culture of accountability in the division. This was referenced by Catherine as it relates to this discussion, the Hamilton Lane program. Another thing that we're doing to build the culture to make us more of an investment shop in the division is our staff investment committees. Everyone in the division has a voice, you know, and FA2 that started yesterday has the same exact vote as the deputy CIO. And I think that that's really important to capture the collective expertise and experience of everyone, and to knowledge share based upon, you know, a phone call, a meeting, a conversation that someone may have had, because it's all additive. And I think every voice that's raised, every concern that's raised as we make important decisions that pay benefits to our members is additive. Just because of title, that doesn't mean that I contribute more. I think that there should be the same expectation of everyone to bring it all, you know, to every meeting. It's also important to recognize that our staff investment committees have rotating members. So it's not just the same people from the asset category. We rotate through with people from different asset categories. And once again, I think that's net additive to our process. We have a partnership mindset as it relates to building culture. I'm going to repeat a fact that was shared with the Board of Investments in December in our annual TIDE update. And this relates to the Board of Investment strategic initiatives. We've got lots of strategic initiatives, and that there are many reports presented to the board about those strategic initiatives. 80% of those reports that come to the board about our strategic initiatives are prepared by cross-functional teams. So there's buy-in, there's raise your hand. Everyone, has the opportunity to be a small, medium, or we could do it in Starbucks lingo. It's tall, grande, venti, in terms of what their various contribution is. And that contribution isn't just based upon title. Anyone can has the potential to lead a project. And we've seen that at offsites in the past where some of the less experienced people have played an outsized role. And I think that's really powerful, really important. Lewis talked about sharing the real estate with me. I think that this relates to, we want to bring, and we think that we do bring, equal attention to cross-agency collaboration. I think that we're very involved in trying to be as involved as possible in everything where we can lend a hand. I think it's important for the agency, important for our members, important for the boards. I'll quiet down in a little bit, but a couple other areas. One is communication. Communication is critical to culture. We have coffee chats in the division where we'll just go into a conference room and talk. But I think another aspect of communication, and once again, this goes back to what we lost as it relates to connectivity as a result of COVID, is I think that we're less present when we're present. I think that there's a natural tendency to use devices in meetings. And I think I failed. I tried to implement a device-free meeting, but I think a lot of people are actually doing work and looking at sub-documents as it relates to things that we're discussing. So it's relevant also for, a security standpoint for people to, if their kids need them or, someone needs them. But I think that use of other devices that aren't agenda specific should be limited, because I think it's an imperative to be present, and maybe that's the one thing to building culture. Maybe it is just being present. And maybe the last topic for how we're thinking about our culture, and it relates to succession planning, but is, team mobility. And this also was shared with the board in December with the Tide update. 15 people, or about 30% of the team, has been promoted in the last 5 years. So I think that we want everyone to be, ambitious in a really positive way, and to show up in committees, to show up in discussions. And I think that and being present. And I think that that's reflected in the number of internal promotions we've had, within the team. And maybe the last thing I'll say before handing back to Lewis is, it's nice to have these talking points, but this is not a celebration. This isn't victory. I think that we can do better. We will do better when we're talking about this next year. There'll be other things. And then next year I'll say, but our best is yet to come. So once again, this isn't celebration. I think that it's more a charge that getting better is an evergreen process.
Thank you, John. I think it was important and I appreciate John sharing those insights, especially sharing that with this governing body, the Board of Investments. Next slide, please. And then just as more broadly, obviously aligning our culture and anchoring that to our values. We've talked about that. I won't go into detail, but I know one of the things that we talk about is our I ACT concept. It's very possessive, it's actionable, can be a little gimmicky, I'll agree, but I think it's really relevant when we talk about how we go about our day-to-day and really acting in accordance to our values. So certainly want to make sure that those discussions are anchored, because it directly reflects our member service quality, our fiduciary decision-making, and obviously our organizational resilience. Next slide, please. And this goes to John's point. So just at a high level on our engagement survey, we had a 67% participation rate. That means a third of the staff didn't participate. So that's something for us to focus in on and making sure that we have their voice and their engagement, and always operating even on the results. And again, this was an anonymous, and the survey was grounded on our values. All of the questions were related to our 6 values and really was the foundation of building our engagement survey. But if you look at the presentation done in November, or you look at the results, our focus is always looking at how we can improve. It's interesting, we had a meeting with the leadership team, and obviously we want to go to, well, what are we doing well? And we don't want to lose sight that we are doing some things well, but our focus, my focus, and collectively the leadership team should always be is how can we always improve and respond to the feedback that's being delivered. So that's always going to be our lens. Next slide, please. And so the 5 key areas that were outlined both in the engagement survey, but more importantly in the focus groups that occurred, about 75 team members participated in those focus groups. And these are the 5 key critical areas that was identified and things that we're working specifically to address. Accountability gap, inconsistent expectations and follow through across the organization. Also fear of retaliation, lack of leadership behaviors, disconnect between values and lived experiences, poor workforce planning, performance management, lack of inclusivity and communication, and also follow through and trust. So those are the 5 things that really grounded what our focus is prospectively and making sure that we make incremental improvements. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So these are the 3 bucket areas that we're focused in on. Oh, I'm sorry, one slide back, please. Slide 8, please. So the 3 areas that we've focused in on, and again, we're being intentional, not trying to fix everything at once, but really being intentional on these 3 areas. So focus on the highest impact areas of leadership accountability. And we'll go into specifically what we're doing there, workforce planning and performance management, and obviously the inclusivity and follow through. Next slide, please. So accountability and leadership behaviors, over and above the expectations that supervisors have and we have of one another, we have communicated 5 foundational expectations that all leaders at all levels of the organization will have, and making sure that those are directly grounded to the feedback that we receive from staff members. So it's a direct correlation. When I started the presentation about how individuals experience what we do, this is a direct correlation of that experience. Also making sure that we have updated our policies around non-retaliation. You'll see here a code of ethical conduct policy update from Jessica Rivas, and those are embedded in our values, and also continued education and training for managers and supervisors. From a workforce planning and performance expectation perspective, we've also outlined specific areas there that I'll touch on briefly. And then lastly, making sure that we have good follow through and communication. John talked about his coffee sessions. We have also a chat session where staff have direct access to me, monthly staff meetings, divisional meetings, and making sure that there's a normal cadence to ensure that there's clear communication across the organizations at all levels. And then lastly, we have an employee council team that does a great job, separate from the management team. It's really run by the staff, and they ensure that there's good collaborative engagements and efforts throughout the organization. And then also our IDEA team that we're going to look at bolstering, where it talks about a more inclusive work environment and promoting a more inclusive work environment. Next slide, please. So I won't spend too much time on these slides. John talked about some of the initiatives that he has in terms of growing the investment office, or developing the investment office, I should say. The investment team actually happens to be organizationally a destination. One of the things that's, when we talk about leadership development more broadly, is we had 2 programs pre-COVID that we paused, and we're going to make sure we bring those back. Those were communications that we heard loud and clear, but ensure that we bring them back in a structured approach. And what you see here, making sure that they have focus on individual contributors, supervisors, and managers across the organization to help develop and grow their skill sets meaningfully. I do also commend the investment office, and there's been a handful of team members that have transitioned from the organization into the investment office. So there's a pipeline not only within the investment office, but I think it's important to know there's a pipeline organizationally to other positions of greater responsibility. Next slide, please. And then more on the experiential growth opportunities. This is just something just low-hanging fruit for us in terms of the job shadowing program. And when we have opportunities that are temporary in nature and giving individuals those detailed opportunities to serve, whether it's a 60 or 90-day of capacity, again, developing that growth within the organization and making sure that we have a strong succession plan and bench to choose from. Next slide, please. And consistency matters. We talked about continuous improvement. So obviously culture is built on consistency, and they talk about every day, but again, every interaction. Follow through is more important than messaging, and then trust is earned through repeated actions. So again, making sure that we're following these respective pillars in terms of how we get to where we talk about a culture of excellence. Next slide, please. And then the accountability loop. Our next engagement survey is going to be in January 2027. As I stated, we have key incremental things that we're going to do organizationally that we have already put into place and continue to follow through, listen, analyze, act, and measure. So there'll be another opportunity to, again, this is an iterative process for us to hear back from our team in January on how we're doing. And with that, Chair Kehoe, John and I will stand for any questions.
Any questions?
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to see that all of this effort is going into working with the employees and the culture. I just have one clarification question. Louis, you stated regarding the job shadowing program, I thought I heard you say there's a 60 to 90-day capacity or 60 to 90-day.
Oh, I referenced that. If we can go to slide, I think it's, slide 11. That's in the temporary details opportunities. So oftentimes we have positions that we may have, whether it's waiting for recruitment, it may be 90 days where we can put people in an interim basis on a detailed basis to serve in that capacity.
Okay, got it. So it's 1 to 5 days shadowing, not 30, 60 to 90-day shadowing. Got it. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Ms. Mee.
Not much of a question, but a comment. I just want to say that since last time I saw the surveying, right, I'm so glad to see the update in the reports. This just show leadership is leading by example, and then showing accountability and the ownership of what we found, the findings in the surveys. So thank you for doing that. I hope the whole organization is seeing it and working together in improving from here. And thank you.
Thank you. Yep, I obviously saw the presentation of the Board of Retirement, and I just think that we're doing an amazing job here as an organization, between the raises that we just gave to our staff, between the culture that we're setting, between the family environment, the people we're onboarding. I just think we do amazing things here, and if we could only capture that in all of our recruiting material, keep that going, right? So keep doing the good job that you're doing. And John, I appreciated you being here and providing your perspective on this. It really helped tie it in for the BOI side. So I enjoyed your additional comments on the culture. Any last questions or comments? I see none. Okay. We'll move on to, we have reports E through I, which are all information only. Any board member wish to pull any of those for discussion? Hearing none, we're going to move on to the items for staff review. Don't believe we have anything. Okay, we'll move on to items for future agendas. Your opportunity to ask for future items for discussion from any trustee. I'm hearing none, so we are going to go to the order.
Mr. Gatto? Okay, we'll come back to you. Ms. Ginsburg? Ms. Langton?
Thank you. Did anyone hear that President Biden was in Pasadena yesterday? He was in Pasadena and he went to La Cañada Handles to get ice cream. And I went there for lunch yesterday and didn't know why they had part of it blocked off. And I left, had my Blue Monster ice cream and left. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, I thought that was really cool. And then one other quick thing. I'm going to say this, but I certainly don't want to minimize the seriousness of our meetings. These are very serious meetings. We have a lot of tough issues to handle. They're very complex for me specifically. But I do like to lighten things up occasionally. And last month, I don't know if you recall, it was Linda's birthday, and we did a birthday poem for her through ChatGPT. And when John got up to speak, he kind of gave a little bit of a, hey, what about me? So yeah, so but I didn't use ChatGPT this time. Thank you very much. I'm adapting it from a song, and no worries because the song is in the public domain, so there's no copyright problems. And I'm not going to sing it. I'm going to say it. So just get the idea. Old John Grable had a fund, CICIO. And in that fund, he had some assets, CICIO. With a PE here and a GE there, here a hedge, there a credit, everywhere risk mitigated. Old John Grable had a fund, CICIO. So thank you, OJGCIO, for handling our money.
Mr. Gatto, you're next.
Yeah, I was gonna say, thanks for calling on me first. I'm the slowest with the mute button, but no, I have nothing for the good of the order, but wonderful to see everybody even virtually.
Thank you. Ms. Mead?
Not much, but thank you everyone for a great day, a great meeting. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Mead. Mr. Jones?
Nothing.
Okay.
Bravo, Ms. Langton. That was excellent. I don't think I'd be able to do that. So. And I appreciate everybody's energy and effort. It was a great meeting. So we'll move on to our executive session. So let's go ahead. And actually, before we do that, let's just ask, is there anybody that wants to discuss the executive session item? Okay, so let's go ahead and go into executive session and ask for those who are not involved in that, if you can leave the room.